Hey guys, it's me, Seren. I'm back with another video. It's Monday, so hopefully I can get this video up today, the same day. Happy Monday. Hope you guys had a great weekend. This is a video that's been on my mind for a while. I've been wanting to make it, so please bear with me if it runs a little long. I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I actually have a set of notes that I will be referring to throughout this video. And I hope you guys enjoy it because this is one that's been on my mind for a while. This video is about new racism, colorblindness, and whitewashing. And I use the term new racism. It's a term that I've been reading a lot recently. It kind of was birthed out of the term new blacks, right? Which is a fairly new term that we all know Pharrell basically created. In his quote, he had a quote where he spoke about there being pretty much like a new type of black person, one that doesn't see race or allow race to have an impact on their lives. And a lot of people found that quote and that whole interview and the whole concept of new blacks to be really problematic because there are, as I've discussed in other videos, systematic forms of racism and oppression that are in place that no matter how much you try to kind of turn away and look a blind eye and not let racism affect your life, there's just all types of systematic racism and oppression in your life that will affect you that you cannot turn away from no matter how hard you try to be open-minded and a new black. There are now new forms of racism. So there's been this term that's kind of been born out of that called new racism. Just kind of a new era of racism, one that I believe is far more insidious, and lots of other people agree with me. There have been a whole host of articles and think pieces going around, where with new racism, you kind of have this idea of colorblindness. So, I don't see color, I don't see race. People claim to not see color and they refuse to talk about racism. They're pretty much making racism a taboo subject, even though racism is still something that so many people deal with in this country. I've cut a handful of friends off since the whole Ferguson thing started, because I've had people say to me, oh, this is not about race, this is about class, this is about poor versus black, this is about police brutality, it's about this, it's about that. And I've kind of had to explain to them these concepts of intersectionality, as I've talked about in other videos, how it can be about more than one thing. And I've had people just literally try to like turn a blind eye and just completely remove racism from the conversation. And I feel that this is an example of this new racism where you claim not to see color and you refuse to talk about racism. You make talking about racism taboo. And that way we don't have to move forward. We don't have to change. We don't have to make progress. We don't have to address black people and the things that they're going through in this country. We can just pretend that everything is the same and we just keep on living our daily lives and we don't have to face our own culpability in these systems and in these problems, and we're all, slightly culpable. Even black people that want to turn a blind eye, like Pharrell, and say we're new blacks, we're this, we're that. Those type of people are also buying into this era of new racism. Racism will not be magically willed away. I saw a really cool Tumblr post that had a picture of Ku Klux Klan members in the thousands of them with the hoods and the whole thing. And it said, people today want you to believe that all these people magically disappeared, right? It's like those people had children that they probably raised to believe racist beliefs, and their children had children, and their children had children, and so on and so forth. And even though over time, the more in-your-face Ku Klux Klan forms of racism have died down, have become, inappropriate, people still hold a lot of racist ideologies that they play close to the chest. BuzzFeed put up a video called Diet Racism, and it said, for people that don't want to be hardcore racist, but they still hold racist thoughts. I'll definitely post a link. And it just had a ton of different things, and not just black. It didn't include just black racism either. It had racism against Hispanics, against Asians, There was some stuff in there like, I see that, that Mexican person looking for a job. What do you want to bet he's an illegal immigrant? That's racist. Are you doing border patrols with guns? No, you're not an extremist. Are you burning crosses on people's lawn? No, you're not an extremist. But you're still racist. You're still holding these racist thoughts and these racist beliefs. And no amount of color blindness or saying you don't see race or saying you don't see color is going to eradicate, those beliefs. Racism is not going to be magically willed away, especially not with the racist systems still in place that ensure whites continue to benefit as first-class citizens. White supremacy and white privilege, these systems are still in place. White people still benefit from certain amounts of privilege. They still have a leg up, really, on the rest of us. And all the claiming you don't see race in the world is never going to get rid of that. You're going to continue to have that, and the rest of us are still going to continue to be playing catch-up. In I want to say the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, Oprah did a really interesting video. I saw the video a long time ago. I'll try to see if I can find it, where she discusses some concepts of colorblindness. And I feel like it's especially poignant in today's day and age, because a white woman in her audience, stood up and said, well, I don't see race. I don't see color. So how can I be a racist? And Oprah said, when you say to me that you don't see color, you know what that means to me? That means you don't see my color. You don't see my race. And the fact that you don't see my color or see my race means that you have stripped me of my color, right? You had to strip me of my color to make me human. So if you saw my black skin, you would see me as something less than human. So when you tell me you don't see color, you don't see race, you see me as a human being, that means that my blackness dehumanizes me in my mind, right? So when you see color, when you see blackness, you see someone less than human. You may possibly see an animal. You possibly see dirt, just nothing. And a lot of people, I personally feel, carry this mindset around. The majority of the people that tell you they don't see color and they don't see race, that's what they're saying, right? Pretty much what they're saying is that whiteness is the norm. Whiteness represents all people. Race is something other, and they have to take their otherness away from you to kind of put you on their level of being a human being, right? Like, I don't see race. I don't see your color. I just see a person. Kerry Washington gave an interview that said she's offended when people say that, because she goes, I'm black and I'm a woman. These things both contributed to who I am. They make up a vast part of my identity. So how can you try to take that away from me? Someone wouldn't tell me, well, I don't see a woman. I am a woman. I want to be seen as a woman. I don't want to be seen as anything else. I'm not a man. I'm not other. I'm a woman. That contributes to who I am. I'm also black. That contributes to who I am. I'm a black woman. These are parts of my identity. And removing them, if that in your mind somehow escalates me, then we have a problem. We have a problem of racism and sexism, right? We should all be on an equal playing field regardless. You shouldn't have to extract my color to put me on a level playing field. The movie Noah, which recently came out, and now Exodus, Gods and Kings, which has been catching a lot of backlash for the same thing. Both of these directors kind of famously said they cast all white people because they felt like they needed the movie to represent an everyman, someone that all people could relate to. And they translated that into white, especially white males, translates into the norm, right? That's the everyman, that's the every person, that's someone we can all relate to. Color is other. I want to say that Ridley Scott, the director for Exodus, even said that he felt like including people of color in the main cast would be distracting, right? So people of color, we're other, we're distracting, we're not the norm, we're not the everyman, and the only way for us to be escalated into these positions is for people to literally remove our color, strip our color from us and tell us, I don't see color. You're not like the others. You're not like other people. You're pretty for a black girl. You're handsome for a black guy. You speak so well. You're so articulate. These are all backhanded compliments, Telling someone you don't see race or any of the other things I just named, these are backhanded compliments that literally use race to dehumanize them, makes their race a defect, makes it something that needs to be stripped away for them to be equal to you, as I said before, And colorblindness and whitewashing go hand in hand, because 9 times out of 10 when someone is saying they don't see color, what they're saying is everyone is white. Everyone in their world is white. right? And I've talked about this before with the Lena Dunham and the girls saying, well, I didn't include black people in my show because I literally don't see them. I don't have any black friends. I don't know any black people. That is not my life. This world of white people, this is my life, you know? And white people are seen as the norm to the point where they can even come in and take over roles and stories that were meant for people of color, like Exodus, which takes place in Egypt, which is in Africa, you know, like Noah, which technically those biblical stories take place in Africa and the Middle East. So those are the people that should be cast. There's been a ton of backlash going around because there have been rumors that they're making a live action Ghost of the Shell movie and they're casting this white girl who was the lead in Wolf of Wall Street with Leonardo DiCaprio, you know? And people are saying, well, why cast a white girl for a main role that's obviously Japanese? Why not cast a Japanese actress? And I read a comment on one of the articles that said it shouldn't matter that she's not Japanese. We need to learn to see past race. We need to learn to stop trying to force people of a certain ethnicity to be the ones acting out these ethnic stories. We need to move past seeing race. That's the whole thing in a nutshell, right? Colorblindness, whitewashing. All this is really doing is just enforcing the idea that whiteness is the norm, that whiteness is the standard, and that anything else is other, that anything else is outside of the box, that anything else is a defect. And we all need to try to attain whiteness for us to be humans, for us to deserve the right to live in the case of people being murdered, for us to deserve the right to act out our stories in plays, in movies, for us to have speaking roles, for us to not be the first ones to die, for us to be prominent in literature, in children's books, in science fiction, in fantasy. We have to try to attain whiteness. That's what we need to ascribe to do, to be seen as human beings. Otherwise, we're seen literally as less than. And I read an interesting piece, I'll definitely include a link, called There's a Hunger, which I love that word. There's a hunger to deny that race matters. The new segregation, there's that term again, new racism, new segregation, the new segregation and the white America, black America divide. Excellent article. And there's a quote in it that I'm going to read to you guys. The reigning constitutional law basically says that, in general, government decision makers should ignore race, including racial justice. That is a prime sentence, because when you're ignoring race, when you're colorblind, when you're seeing past race, how can you see racial injustice, right? How can you get justice for people that are the victims of race crimes and hate crimes if you don't see race? You literally won't see a problem, right? So the quote continues. So the law does not support a race-conscious perspective. It endorses a colorblind perspective, which of course is informed by the perspective of the white people who are making the decisions on the Supreme Court. Brilliant. Brilliant. The law does not support a race-conscious perspective. It endorses a colorblind perspective. So what that means is, instead of trying to recognize that race does matter, that we are all different races, and that has a point in our lives and in our law, it endorses a colorblind perspective, which is the perspective of trying to say that we are all the same, race doesn't matter. However, a colorblind perspective is the perspective of the white people that are making the decisions on the Supreme Court. So inherently, a colorblind, I don't see race perspective held by white people is going to be informed by white people, is going to show that colorblindness equals white. You see what I'm saying? So white people might see a jury of 7 white people trying a black defendant and say, I don't see an issue with that. That's a jury of his peers. That's not a jury of his peers. You don't see the issue because you're white. You are colorblind. Like, race matters. And the quote goes on to finish, that's one obstacle that could prevent bodies that are racially integrated and are going to try and talk across these divides in a frank and important kind of way. Now, this is important not just in law, but also in, also in diversity in, let's say, the media and books and movies, right? This concept of colorblindness And seeing past race is an obstacle because you're kind of moving backwards. You're kind of moving away from ideas about diversity and inclusiveness and including all different races and all different types of people in books, movies, film, plays, etc. That becomes an obstacle because instead of saying, wow, this cast looks really white, maybe we should try to include some people of color, you're going to say, well, I don't see race, I don't see color. This is just the group, this is just the vision. It allows you to completely sidestep any questions or any moral or ethical obligations about or to diversity, and that makes me think of Woody Allen, who I'm like so conflicted when it comes to Woody Allen because I find his movies to be brilliant and really profound, but his whole pedophilia and Asian fetishization, with his stepdaughter and his wife and the whole thing. And he recently gave these really problematic quotes about race in his casting because the majority of his movies are white, lily white. And he was asked about that and he got really offended and huffy and he was just like, how dare you? I don't see race. I don't see race. I only cast the best actors for the part. But what are we talking about right now? Being colorblind or saying you don't see race, saying, well, I only cast the best actors for the part, completely allows you to sidestep any questions about diversity or the lack of diversity in your storytelling, right? Because if you're literally saying you only got the best actors for the part, but every single actor in your movie is white, what is the implication behind that statement? That all the best actors and actresses are white, and that the persons of color are secondary, are inferior, are less than, right? They're not as good. And that's the same in everything. Saying you're colorblind and you don't see race and letting that enable you to fill, whatever your artistic vision or whatever your social justice, your jury, whatever, allowing that to be filled with all white people and then saying, well, you're colorblind, you don't see race, those are just the people that magically ended up there. Really, it's a new form of racism. It's a new liberal, insidious, low-key, kind of cloaked in, no, I'm not racist. It's new racism. It's a new form of racism. It's a new form of segregation. And it's very real and it's very, very apparent, And you should really just side-eye anyone that uses any of those phrases. Colorblind, don't see race, see past race, you're not like the rest of them, you're XYZ for one of them. These are all loaded statements, loaded terms, trigger words that are really saying something far more insidious and are really allowing people to continue to keep the wheels of systematic white supremacy and white privilege and oppression to turn without looking inward and looking at themselves and holding themselves culpable and saying, maybe, like in my last video, subconscious racism, maybe there is a part of my brain that subconsciously thinks that white actors are better than black actors, and that's why even though I supposedly don't see race, I consistently cast white actor after white actor after white actor. Maybe there is a part of me that thinks that, black people or Japanese people just, aren't as good as I am. Nobody wants to admit that, right? That makes people feel uncomfortable, makes them feel guilty. Nobody wants to admit that, makes them feel like a bad person. So instead, they make race something taboo, something that we cannot even talk about because it makes people feel uncomfortable. I read an article about a professor that was put on leave because she was having race discussions in her class, and a group of white kids from the class complained to the dean that the talks made them feel uncomfortable, and the woman was suspended. And it's like, but isn't that the point of going to college? To expand your mind, to learn to think critically, to face the things that make you uncomfortable? When you have this new racism and this new segregation, it makes it really easy to just, like I said, avoid it, completely sidestep it. And now you have this built-in automatic excuse. Well, I just don't see race. I just don't see color. I don't see how Ferguson and Mike Brown can be a race thing, can be about race. we have a black president. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. It enables you to completely withdraw from any type of, critical conversations about race. Completely. It just allows you to live in your white bubble and pretend that there's nothing wrong. No matter what the stats say, no matter what the numbers say, no matter what's actually happening in the world, no matter what people are telling you face to face, I experienced this, I go through this. It just gives you this built-in excuse to say, you don't see anything, there are no problems, and we've moved past it, and we're living in a colorblind society when what colorblind really means is white. White is right. White is the norm. When it's literally the same society that we've been living in, for the last 500 years, and nothing has changed, So I'm going to include links to all these things. I know there was tons of links and tons of references. I'm going to really try and get all of them and include them. I know this video was a little longer. I clearly had a lot to say about it. And as I read other things, I might be making more parts to this video because I feel like this whole concept of new racism and new segregation is really, really important and prevalent. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and we'll keep watching. As always, food for thought. Thank you so much for watching. I love all you guys so much. And happy Monday. Have a great week. So nice talking to you guys. Bye.